The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber opened with a deep rumble that echoed through the halls of Xerion Prime. Representatives from 12 different alien species walked into the grand meeting room, their various forms creating a strange parade of colors and shapes. Some walked on two legs like humans once did, others slithered or floated, and a few moved on multiple limbs that clicked against the polished metal floor. Admiral Corex of the Valtari Empire stood at the front of the room, his four muscular arms crossed over his chest. His red skin gleamed under the bright lights, and his yellow eyes scanned the assembled crowd with satisfaction. Today was a special day, a day he had waited for many months to celebrate. Fellow council members, Corex began, his voice booming through the chamber. I call this meeting to order. We gather today to mark a great victory for our galaxy. The other representatives settled into their seats, which had been specially designed for each species. The Zephyrians with their bird-like features perched on tall poles, while the reptilians coiled their long bodies on heated platforms. The Andromedans with their pale blue skin and large heads sat in chairs that hummed with energy. Corex activated a large holographic display that filled the center of the room. Images of space battles, burning planets, and destroyed ships appeared in the air. The representatives watched with growing excitement as the scenes played before them. 6 months ago, we faced our greatest threat, Corex continued. The humans, with their chaotic nature and unpredictable behavior, had spread across too many worlds. They refused to follow proper galactic law. They questioned our authority at every turn. They had to be stopped. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Prime Minister Quell of the Andromedans nodded his large head slowly. The humans were indeed a problem. Their constant need to explore and change things disrupted the natural order of our galaxy. But now, Corex said with a wide grin that showed his sharp teeth, that problem has been solved forever. Earth lies in ruins. Their colonies have been absorbed into our territories. The last human resistance ships have been destroyed. There are no more humans in our galaxy. The chamber erupted in celebration. Alien voices raised in joy, creating a cacophony of sounds that would have been impossible for human ears to understand. Some representatives stood and clapped, others made clicking noises with their claws, and a few released pheromones that smelled like victory. Far away from the celebration, in the dark space between stars, Captain Jake Morrison watched the transmission on a cracked screen. His ship, the Aurora, drifted silently in the shadow of a large asteroid. The vessel looked old and damaged from the outside, but inside it hummed with advanced technology that the Council had never seen. Jake turned away from the screen and looked at his crew. They were the survivors, the ones who had made it out when Earth fell. Lieutenant Lisa Parker stood beside him, her face hard with determination. Sergeant Kevin Hart worked at a communications station, his fingers dancing over controls that connected them to other hidden human ships. They think they've won, Jake said quietly, his voice carrying a mix of sadness and anger. They believe they have created their perfect galaxy without humans. Lisa nodded, her eyes never leaving the transmission. They destroyed our homes, scattered our people, and now they celebrate like it was some great achievement. They have no idea what they've actually done. Jake walked to the large window that showed the empty space around them. Once this area had been full of human ships, trading vessels, and exploration craft. Now it was silent and dark, a graveyard of dreams and ambitions. Sir, Kevin called from his station. I'm getting confirmation signals from the other fleets. Operation Exodus is complete. All human ships and colonies have successfully disappeared from Council space. We are ghosts now, invisible to their sensors and forgotten by their records. Jake nodded slowly. Operation Exodus had been humanity's final desperate plan. When it became clear they could not win the war through direct fighting, they had chosen a different path. Every human ship, every colony, every trace of their civilization had vanished into the dark spaces where the Council never looked. How many of us made it out? Lisa asked. Kevin checked his readings. Current count shows 47 hidden fleets scattered across the galaxy. Each fleet has between 50 and 200 ships. Total human population in hiding is estimated at 15 million people. The number was much smaller than the billions who had once called human worlds home, but it was enough. It was a beginning, a seed from which something new could grow. On the screen, the Council representatives continued their celebration. They passed around what looked like ceremonial drinks and made speeches about the bright future that awaited their galaxy. None of them seemed to understand what removing humans would actually mean for their civilization. They wanted a universe without humans, Jake said, his voice growing stronger. They are about to learn exactly what that means. They removed the species that built half their technology, maintained their trade routes, and solved their impossible problems. They think they've eliminated chaos, but they've actually destroyed the foundation of everything they've built. Lisa moved to stand beside him at the window. What's our next move, Captain? Jake was quiet for a long moment, watching the stars. In the distance, he could see the faint glow of council worlds, bright with the lights of alien civilizations that had no idea what was coming. We wait, he said finally. We watch. We let them discover for themselves what a galaxy without humans really looks like. When their perfect order starts to fall apart, when their systems begin to fail, and when they realize they need us more than they ever wanted to admit, then we will remind them why humans were never their enemies. Kevin turned from his station. And if they don't learn the lesson? Jake smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. Then we will teach them. The hard way. The Aurora drifted deeper into the asteroid field, disappearing from any possible detection. Around the galaxy, other human ships did the same, becoming invisible shadows in the darkness between worlds. The Council had gotten exactly what they wanted, a universe without humans. Soon they would understand why that was the worst thing they could have possibly wished for. The first signs of trouble appeared 3 months after the Great Celebration. On the industrial world of Kepler 442b, Supervisor Veltar noticed something wrong with the main production line. The Zephyrian had worked in the factory for over 20 years, and he had never seen the machines behave this way before. The assembly robots that built starship components were moving slower than usual. Their precision, once perfect to the smallest measurement, now showed tiny errors that grew larger each day. Parts that should fit together smoothly now required manual adjustment, and the quality of finished products was dropping week by week. Veltar called his maintenance team to examine the systems. The technicians ran their diagnostic tools over every machine, checking power levels, computer codes, and mechanical parts. Everything appeared normal according to their instruments, but the problems continued to grow worse. I don't understand it, Chief Technician Mordan said, his feathered head shaking in confusion. All the readings show that the machines are functioning properly, but the output clearly shows they are not. Veltar studied the production reports on his data pad. 6 months ago, before the humans disappeared, the factory produced 12,000 starship components per day with 0 defects. Now they were lucky to produce 9,000 parts, and 15% of those had to be scrapped for quality problems. Run a historical analysis, Veltar ordered. Compare our current performance with the past 5 years of data. The results were disturbing. The decline in performance had started exactly when the last human engineer left the planet. Dr. Patricia Wells had been the lead systems specialist, and she had maintained the factory's computer programs for over a decade. When the Council ordered all humans to be removed, she had simply vanished along with the rest of her species. The maintenance protocols are breaking down, Veltar reported to his superiors. These systems were designed with human input, and they require constant small adjustments that only humans seem to understand. Without them, the machines are slowly losing their efficiency. Similar reports began arriving from across Council space. Trade stations that had operated smoothly for decades suddenly developed navigation problems. The automated traffic control systems that guided millions of ships through space lanes began making errors, causing delays and minor collisions. On the agricultural world of Series 7, the crop management systems started producing smaller harvests. The computers that controlled irrigation, fertilizer distribution, and pest control were making decisions that seemed logical, but somehow didn't work as well as they had before. Governor Salth of the reptilian colonies received the most alarming report from New Houston, a world that humans had terraformed and made suitable for life. The atmospheric processors that maintained the planet's breathable air were shutting down one by one. How long before the atmosphere becomes dangerous? Salth asked his science advisor. At the current rate of system failure, we estimate 3 to 4 years before the air becomes unbreathable for most species. Dr. Zektar replied. The human-designed systems have multiple layers of backup protocols, but they all seem to require human oversight to function properly. Salth's forked tongue flicked out nervously. Can we repair the systems ourselves? We have tried, but the human technology is more complex than we initially understood. They built these machines not just with programming, but with something they called intuitive algorithms. The systems were designed to learn and adapt, but without human guidance, they are adapting in the wrong directions. The problems were not limited to technology. Diplomatic negotiations that had once run smoothly were now falling apart. For generations, humans had served as neutral mediators in disputes between alien species. They had a talent for understanding different points of view and finding compromises that satisfied everyone. Without human diplomats, old conflicts began to resurface. The Valtari Empire and the Zephyrian Federation started arguing over mining rights in systems they had shared peacefully for decades. Trade agreements fell apart when neither side could find middle ground in their negotiations. Admiral Corex received daily reports of increasing tensions throughout Council space. Border disputes were escalating into armed conflicts. Economic partnerships were dissolving as different species struggled to communicate their needs and expectations without human translators. This is temporary, Corex told himself as he reviewed yet another report of system failures. The galaxy will adapt to function without the humans. We just need time to learn their methods. But time was not solving the problems. If anything, they were getting worse. The complex web of technology, trade, and diplomacy that held galactic civilization together had been built with human involvement at every level. Removing humans from the equation was like taking a crucial ingredient out of a recipe. Everything still looked the same, but nothing worked properly anymore. Deep in space, hidden in a nebula that sensors could not penetrate, Admiral Susan Blake monitored the situation from her command ship. The massive vessel housed over 10,000 humans, refugees from the fall of Earth who now lived in exile among the stars. Intelligence reports are coming in from our agents throughout Council space, her communications officer reported. Infrastructure failures are accelerating. Economic productivity is down 30% across all major systems. Diplomatic relations are deteriorating rapidly. Susan nodded as she studied the data, just as we predicted. They never understood that humans weren't just another species in their galaxy. We were the glue that held everything together. Her chief engineer, Colonel Rick Barnes, looked up from his technical reports. Our sleeper programs are ready to activate on your command. We can accelerate their system failures if necessary. Not yet, Susan said. Let them figure it out on their own first. When they realize how badly they need us, our position will be much stronger. On distant worlds, alien leaders were beginning to panic. Production quotas were failing, trade routes were becoming unreliable, and their perfect galactic order was crumbling faster than anyone had expected. Prime Minister Quell called an emergency council session to address the growing crisis. Representatives gathered once again in the Grand Chamber on Zarian Prime, but this time there was no celebration. The mood was dark and worried. We are facing systematic failures across multiple sectors, Quell announced. Our experts are working to identify the cause and implement solutions. The cause is obvious, declared Minister Yalthon of the Crystalline Collective. We removed the humans too quickly. They were integrated into our systems more deeply than we realized. Admiral Corex stood angrily. The humans were a threat to galactic stability. We made the right choice in eliminating them. Did we? Asked Governor Salth. Because from where I stand, it looks like we eliminated the very people who were keeping our civilization stable. The argument that followed was heated and unproductive. Some council members insisted they could solve the problems without human help, while others quietly wondered if they had made a terrible mistake. Hidden in the darkness between stars, human ships continued to watch and wait. Their sensors recorded every failing system, every diplomatic breakdown, every sign that the galaxy was learning what life without humans really meant. The Council had achieved their goal. They had created a universe without humans. Now they were beginning to understand the true cost of that victory. The attack came at exactly midnight, Galactic Standard Time, across every world in Council space, but it was not the kind of attack that anyone expected. There were no explosions, no weapons fire, no invasion fleets dropping from the sky. Instead, the assault came from within the very systems that the aliens had come to depend on. On Zarian Prime, Admiral Corex was awakened by emergency alarms that screamed through his personal quarters. His aide rushed in with a data pad showing system failures across the capital world. "Sir, the banking networks have crashed completely," the aide reported. All financial transactions have stopped. Trade accounts are showing zero balances across the entire planet. Corex grabbed his uniform and dressed quickly. How is that possible? Our financial systems have quantum encryption that cannot be broken. That's just the beginning, sir. The communication networks are down. Starship navigation systems are providing false coordinates, and the planetary defense grid has gone completely offline. By the time Corex reached the command center, reports were flooding in from across the galaxy. Every major council world was experiencing the same coordinated system failures. It was as if someone had reached into the heart of their civilization and simply turned off the power. Prime Minister Quell's voice crackled over the emergency channels from the Andromedan homeworld. This cannot be a coincidence. These systems were designed to be impossible to hack from the outside. Unless, said Governor Salth slowly, the attack is coming from the inside. The horrible truth began to dawn on the council leaders. For decades, humans had helped design and maintain their most critical systems. Human engineers had worked on everything from banking software to military defense networks. And apparently, they had left themselves ways to get back in. Dr. Zektar, the reptilian science advisor, ran diagnostic scans on his world's failing systems. What he found made his blood run cold. The attack programs were not inserted recently, he reported. They have been hidden in our systems for years, waiting for activation. The humans built back doors into everything they touched. The revelation sent shockwaves through the council. They had trusted humans with their most sensitive technology, never suspecting that their human partners might one day become their enemies. Now that trust was being used against them in ways they had never imagined possible. On the industrial world of Kepler 442b, Veltar watched his factory grind to a complete halt as the main computers simply refused to respond to commands. The screen showed a simple message in human language. System lockout activated. Please stand by for further instructions. Similar messages appeared on screens throughout council space, all written in human languages that many aliens could not even read. The humans had not just attacked their systems, they had taken complete control of them. The second phase of the attack began 12 hours later. While the aliens struggled to regain control of their own technology, something impossible happened in the space around their most important worlds. Ships appeared, not just a few ships but hundreds of them, massive vessels that seemed to materialize from empty space, their hulls dark and angular in designs that no council species had ever seen before. These were clearly human ships, but they looked nothing like the vessels that had been destroyed 6 months earlier. Captain Danny Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the lead ship, the enormous dreadnought that dwarfed anything the council had ever built. His crew worked at stations that hummed with technology far more advanced than anything the aliens possessed. All fleets report ready. Captain, his communications officer announced. Danny nodded and activated the galaxy-wide transmission system. His image appeared simultaneously on every functioning screen in council space, from the grand chambers of government buildings to the personal devices of ordinary citizens. Greetings, council members, Danny said, his voice calm and controlled. I am Captain Danny Rodriguez of the Human Resistance Fleet. You have been wondering where we went after you destroyed our worlds. Today you get your answer. Behind him, the stars were filled with human ships that continued to decloak from stealth systems the Council had never known existed. Hundreds became thousands as more vessels revealed themselves around every major Council world. 6 months ago, you achieved your goal, Danny continued. You created a universe without humans. Congratulations, how did that work out for you? On Zerion Prime, Admiral Corex stared at the transmission in disbelief. The human fleet surrounding his world was massive, with ships that looked like they could reduce the planet to dust with their weapons. But more disturbing was the fact that they had appeared without any warning from the supposedly impregnable sensor networks. You removed us from your galaxy because you said we were chaotic and unpredictable, Danny said. You claimed we disrupted your perfect order. What you failed to understand is that we were not the chaos in your system. We were the force that kept the chaos under control. The transmission showed footage from across council space, failing factories, crashed economic systems, abandoned colonies, and worlds on the verge of becoming uninhabitable. The careful order that the council had worked so hard to maintain was crumbling without human involvement. For generations, humans served as your engineers, your diplomats, your problem solvers, and your mediators, Danny explained. We built the technology that runs your worlds. We designed the systems that manage your trade. We created the protocols that keep your different species working together peacefully." He paused, letting the words sink in. "You did not just remove a species from the galaxy. You removed the foundation that your entire civilization was built on." The camera pulled back to show the full scope of the human fleet. The ships were arranged in perfect formations around each council world, close enough to demonstrate their overwhelming firepower, but not close enough to be considered an immediate attack. "We are not here for conquest," Danny continued. "We are not here for revenge, though we would have every right to seek it. We are here to make you an offer." Admiral Corex felt a chill run down his spine. Whatever the humans were about to propose, he suspected it would not be pleasant for the Council. "You have 48 hours to consider our terms," Danny said. "Complete and unconditional surrender. Every council government will step down and turn control over to human administrators. Your military forces will disarm and submit to human command. Your worlds will be governed according to human law and human principles." The transmission paused as Danny let the demands sink in. "In return, we will fix your failing systems. We will restore your broken economies. We will prevent your worlds from becoming uninhabitable. We will give you back the stability and prosperity that you threw away when you decided you did not need humans." Prime Minister Quell found his voice and transmitted a response. "And if we refuse your demands?" Danny smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. "Then you will get exactly what you asked for. A universe without humans. We will leave you alone to watch your civilization collapse under its own weight. Your systems will continue to fail. Your economies will continue to crash. Your worlds will become uninhabitable one by one, and we will simply disappear back into the darkness and let nature take its course." The transmission showed more images of failing infrastructure and failing worlds. Without human maintenance and oversight, the complex systems that supported galactic civilization were breaking down faster than anyone had anticipated. "The choice is yours," Danny concluded. "Accept our terms and rebuild under human guidance, or reject them and face the consequences of your own actions. You wanted to see what the galaxy looked like without humans. Now you know." The transmission ended, leaving the council leaders in stunned silence. Around every major world, human ships waited patiently for an answer. Their weapons were not aimed at the planets below, but everyone understood the implicit threat. The humans had returned, and this time they held all the power. Admiral Corex looked around the command center at his panicked staff. The proud Valtari Empire, which had led the fight to eliminate humanity, now faced a choice between surrender and slow extinction. "Sir," his aide asked quietly, "what are your orders?" Corex stared at the human ships on his view screen. "Get me the other council leaders. We need to discuss our options." But deep in his heart, he already knew what those options were. The humans had offered them a way to survive their own mistake. The only question was whether the council's pride would let them take it. Admiral Corex made his decision within 6 hours of receiving the human ultimatum. Pride, he declared to the emergency council session, was more important than survival. The Valtari Empire would never bow to human demands, no matter the consequences. "We are not insects to be stepped on by mammals," Corex announced to his fellow council members. "We built this galaxy's civilization long before humans even learned to use fire. We will not surrender to a species we rightfully destroyed." Prime Minister Quell disagreed strongly. "Look at our worlds, Corex. Look at our failing systems. The humans are offering us a chance to save ourselves from our own mistake." "They are offering us slavery," Corex replied. "Better to die free than live as servants to an inferior species." The vote was close, but Corex's faction won. The council would fight. Every available warship was recalled from patrol duties and guard posts. Defense fleets that had protected alien worlds for centuries abandoned their positions to join the massive armada, assembling at Zerion Prime. Within 36 hours, over 3,000 council ships had gathered in the home system. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history, representing the combined might of 12 different species and their most advanced weapons technology. "Surely," Corex told his fleet commanders, "even humans cannot stand against such overwhelming numbers." The human response was swift and devastating. Captain Amy Foster, commanding the human battleship Defiance, received the Council's declaration of war with grim satisfaction. She had hoped for peace, but she had prepared for this moment. "All human fleets, this is Admiral Blake," came the transmission from the command ship. The Council has chosen war. Implement Protocol 7. Show them what humans learned during our time in exile. Amy smiled as she gave orders to her crew. Protocol 7 was something the Council could never have anticipated because it represented a completely new way of thinking about space combat. Initiate neural link, Amy commanded. Connect all ships in the fleet. Around her, the crew members placed strange devices on their heads that glowed with soft blue light. Similar actions were taking place on every human ship throughout the galaxy. In seconds, thousands of separate vessels became something new. A single organism with many bodies. The Council fleet approached the human positions near Earth's former location with confidence. Their sensors showed only a few hundred human ships facing their massive armada. Admiral Corex, commanding from his flagship, felt victory was assured. Begin the attack, he ordered. Destroy every human vessel. What happened next defied every principle of space warfare that the aliens understood. The human ships moved not as individual vessels pursuing their own survival, but as parts of a coordinated whole. They anticipated each other's movements perfectly, covered each other's weaknesses without communication delays, and struck with the precision of a single massive weapon. Council ships found themselves surrounded and outmaneuvered by human vessels that seemed to read their minds. Weapons fire that should have hit its targets instead struck empty space as human ships moved in patterns that seemed impossible to predict. Return fire from human weapons struck with accuracy that was mathematically impossible for individual gunners to achieve. How are they doing this? Corex demanded as his flagship shuddered under human fire. Our ships outnumber theirs 6-1, but they fight like they share the same brain. His science officer, Dr. Velkoth, studied the sensor readings with growing amazement. Sir, I believe they do share the same brain. Their ships are networked in ways we never imagined possible. They are not fighting as individual vessels, but as a single organism with thousands of parts. The neural link technology was something humans had developed during their exile in the dark spaces between stars. Faced with the need to survive with limited resources, they had learned to share not just information but actual thoughts and instincts across their entire population. Amy Foster felt the battle through the consciousness of every human pilot in the fleet. She knew exactly where every enemy ship was located, what weapons they carried, and what their commanders were thinking. More importantly, she could coordinate the movements of hundreds of vessels with the precision of moving her own arms and legs. Target the Valtari command ship, she thought, and hundreds of other human commanders received the instruction as clearly as if she had spoken directly to them. Within seconds, concentrated fire from dozens of human vessels struck Corex's flagship. The battle that should have been a council victory turned into a rout. Human ships danced through the alien formations like predators hunting in perfect coordination. They disabled rather than destroyed when possible, seeking to capture rather than kill. But their superiority was absolute. Admiral Corex watched his mighty fleet fall apart around him. Ships that had seemed invincible just hours before were being systematically neutralized by human forces that moved with impossible coordination. His own flagship was surrounded by human vessels that somehow anticipated his every tactical decision. Sir, his communications officer reported, we are receiving a transmission from the human fleet commander. Amy Foster's image appeared on Corex's view screen. Behind her, the bridge of the Defiance hummed with activity as human crew members maintained their neural links. Admiral Corex, Amy said calmly, your fleet is defeated. Order your ships to surrender, and we will treat your crews with respect and dignity. Corex's forearms trembled with rage and humiliation. You may have won this battle, human, but you will never truly defeat us. We are warriors bred for conquest across 1,000 generations. No, Amy replied. You are bullies who have never faced real opposition. There is a difference. The surrender was formally signed 6 hours later aboard the human command ship Redemption. Council leaders who had once celebrated the extinction of humanity now knelt before Colonel Rick Barnes as human guards watched silently. Admiral Corex was among the prisoners, his proud uniform torn and stained with the evidence of his defeat. As he was led to the detention areas, he found himself face to face with the human colonel. You could have killed us all, Corex said, confusion and fear evident in his alien features. Your weapons had the power to destroy every ship in our fleet. Why did you show mercy? Rick looked at the defeated alien admiral with something that might have been pity. Because that would have made us like you. Humans do not win by becoming monsters. We win by remaining human. Corex was placed in a detention cell that was clean, comfortable, and equipped with everything necessary for his species' basic needs. The contrast with how humans had been treated during the war was stark and deliberate. Throughout Council space, similar scenes played out as human forces accepted the surrender of alien military units. In every case, the defeated aliens were treated better than they had ever treated their own prisoners, let alone human captives. The message was clear. Humans had not just won a military victory. They had demonstrated moral superiority that made their dominance unquestionable. Dr. Patricia Wells, the former engineer from Kepler 442b, stood in the ruins of her old laboratory. Human technical teams were already working to restore the systems she had once maintained. But this time they would be built with safeguards to prevent another attempted genocide. They never understood, she said to her assistant, as they watched the repairs begin. They thought removing humans would give them a perfect galaxy. They never realized that perfection without compassion is just another word for death. Around the galaxy, human ships maintained their positions over every major world, not as conquerors, but as guardians of a civilization that had nearly destroyed itself through arrogance and fear. The Council's war had lasted less than 3 days. Their recovery from the consequences of that war would take much longer. But for the first time since humans had disappeared from the galaxy, there was hope that recovery was actually possible. The formal surrender ceremony took place exactly 1 year after the Council had celebrated the extinction of humanity. This time, the location was the bombed ruins of the United Nations building in New York. On the scarred surface of Earth, human engineering crews had worked for months to make the damaged structure safe for the ceremony. They had not tried to rebuild it exactly as it was before, but instead had created something new from the wreckage. The result was a building that showed both the destruction that hatred could cause and the hope that forgiveness could create. President Helen Carter stood at the podium where human leaders had once addressed their own species. Now she would address representatives of 12 alien civilizations who had tried to destroy her people and failed. Behind her, holographic displays showed the true extent of human survival and technological advancement. The numbers were staggering. The Council had believed they were facing a few million human refugees hiding in the dark between stars. In reality, humanity had evacuated over 2 billion people to hidden bases and mobile fleets throughout the galaxy. Their technology had advanced far beyond anything the aliens possessed, developed in secret during their years of exile. Admiral Corex knelt with the other Council leaders in front of the podium. His proud Valtari uniform had been replaced with simple gray clothing that marked him as a defeated enemy. Around him, representatives of species that had once ruled the galaxy waited to learn their fate. "We gather here today," Helen began, "not to celebrate victory over our enemies, but to mark the beginning of something new. For too long, this galaxy has been ruled by the belief that might makes right, that the strong may dispose of the weak however they choose." She paused, looking directly at the kneeling aliens. "You sought to destroy us because you feared our differences. You saw our diversity as chaos, our independence as a threat to your order. What you failed to understand is that diversity and independence are not weaknesses to be eliminated, but strengths to be celebrated." Prime Minister Quell, who had argued against the war, raised his large head slightly. "What do you intend to do with us, President Carter?" Helen smiled, and for the first time since their defeat, the aliens saw something other than anger or hatred in a human face. "We intend to teach you. We intend to show you what the galaxy could become if it was built on cooperation instead of domination." The terms of humanity's victory were unlike anything in galactic history. Instead of demanding tribute, territory, or resources, humans required something far more valuable and difficult to provide. They demanded change. Every Council species would undergo what humans called cultural reformation. Their governments would be restructured to include representation for all citizens, not just the powerful elite. Their education systems would teach cooperation and understanding, instead of conquest and superiority. Their military forces would be retrained as peacekeepers and defenders instead of instruments of oppression. Most importantly, human advisors would be embedded within every alien government, not as conquerors but as teachers. They would help rebuild the infrastructure that had collapsed. But this time it would be designed with cooperation and mutual benefit as its foundation. Captain Jake Morrison, now promoted to admiral, oversaw the restoration of Earth's atmosphere from the orbital platform that had become humanity's temporary capital. Through the massive windows, he could see the blue skies returning to his homeworld for the first time since the Council's bombardment. "It's beautiful," said Dr. Patricia Wells, who stood beside him watching transport ships carry the first human settlers back to Earth's surface. "After everything we went through, we're finally coming home." Jake nodded, but his expression remained serious. "This is just the beginning, Patricia. Rebuilding our world is the easy part. Rebuilding our relationship with the rest of the galaxy will take generations." Below them, human and alien work crews labored together to restore the cities that had been destroyed. It was slow work, requiring patience and understanding from both species, but it was progress. For the first time since the war began, humans and aliens were working toward the same goals. The transformation was not easy. Many aliens resisted the changes that humans demanded, clinging to old prejudices and traditional ways of thinking. Some council worlds experienced riots and protests as their populations struggled to accept human guidance. But gradually, the benefits of cooperation became clear. Worlds that embraced human advisors found their economies recovering faster than expected. Trade routes that had collapsed were rebuilt with new safeguards that prevented any single species from dominating others. Diplomatic disputes that had seemed impossible to resolve were settled through human mediation techniques. Admiral Susan Blake, who had commanded the hidden fleets during humanity's exile, now served as the coordinator for galactic reconstruction efforts. Her office on the rebuilt space station, orbiting Earth, received daily reports from human advisors throughout the galaxy. "The Zephyrian Federation has agreed to the new worker protection laws," her aide reported. "Their factory productivity is already showing improvement, now that workers are treated better. The reptilian colonies are requesting additional human engineers to help with their terraforming projects. They want to expand the atmospheric processors to 3 more worlds. And the Crystalline Collective has asked for human mediators to help resolve their border dispute with the Andromedans. Both sides have agreed to accept whatever solution the humans propose." Susan reviewed the reports with satisfaction. The galaxy was not just healing from the damage caused by human absence. It was becoming stronger and more prosperous than it had ever been before. On Zarian Prime, former Admiral Corex worked in a reconstruction facility, learning to use his 4 strong arms for building instead of destroying. The human supervisor, Engineer Lisa Parker, treated him with respect despite their history as enemies. "You are making good progress," Lisa told him as they reviewed his work for the day. "Your structural repairs are getting much stronger and more precise." Corex looked at the building components he had assembled. "I spent my life learning to destroy things. I never imagined that creating something could be so difficult or so satisfying." "Destruction is easy," Lisa replied. "Any fool with enough power can tear things down. Building something that lasts, something that helps others, that takes real skill and intelligence." It was a lesson that the entire galaxy was learning. The Council's attempt to destroy humanity had instead revealed their own weaknesses and limitations. By contrast, humanity's response had demonstrated not just superior technology and tactics, but superior wisdom and compassion. Years later, when young beings across the galaxy studied their history, they would learn about the period known as the Council's demise not as a tale of war and conquest, but as a lesson about the true meaning of strength. They would study how humans had faced extinction and emerged not with hatred but with hope, not with vengeance but with vision for a better future. The transformation was not complete, and perhaps it never would be. But the galaxy had learned an important truth. Diversity was not a threat to be eliminated but a resource to be treasured. Cooperation was not weakness but the foundation of real strength. And mercy was not foolishness but the highest form of wisdom. On Earth, in the rebuilt halls of the United Nations, children from dozens of different species played together in gardens that had once been battlefields. Human children with bright eyes and quick minds played alongside young Zephyrians with colorful feathers, reptilian hatchlings with scales that shimmered in the sunlight, and Andromedan youngsters with their large heads full of curiosity about the world around them. President Helen Carter often visited these gardens, watching the next generation grow up in a galaxy that their parents could barely have imagined. These children would never know a universe divided by fear and hatred. For them, cooperation between species would be as natural as breathing. "They are our real victory," Helen said to Jake as they watched the children play. "Not the military defeat of the Council, but this. A generation that will never see differences as something to fear." Jake nodded, remembering the dark days when humanity had faced extinction. The Council wanted a universe without humans. Instead, they created a universe where humanity could flourish alongside everyone else. The story of the Council's demise had indeed created a universe without the humans who had once lived there. In their place stood something new and stronger, a species that had learned to disappear when necessary, fight when required, and forgive when peace became possible. Most importantly, they had learned that true victory was not about defeating enemies, but about turning enemies into friends. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly what humanity had always hoped for. In the end, the Council had gotten exactly what they asked for, a universe without the humans they had feared. What they got instead was a universe with humans they could finally learn to respect and love.